All right, everybody. So today on the podcast, I have Dr. John Jaquish. How you doing, man?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So I was actually, surprised that we're doing the podcast in the sense that, so I got reached out by your team. Your team reached out to me and they had said, you're going on podcast, it would be great to connect. And I had heard of you, I think probably in the last year or so. I've seen you pop up a few different places. And I didn't know too much about you, and I know you probably know nothing about me. So, this podcast has been going on about 2 years now.
Yep.
Obviously, it is a health and fitness related podcast. I would say predominantly in the quote unquote evidence based fitness industry. So we try to follow the science as best we can. A lot of people who are MDs and PhDs, but obviously even people with certifications, there's issues there as well. So we do our best here. Now,
Sure.
when I first heard about you, I had heard about your book with obviously a controversial title there, right? And so when was that written?
Well, it was written about, I started on about a year ago, but nothing, well, it's hard. I can look at that in different ways. Like, I've been collecting information uh, for about 5 years
Okay.
and really just put it together into an outline and started populating that outline and had a writing team comb through it and decide what was one of the main points I wanted to make. There's probably another 50 pages of material.
Okay.
No, a quarter, less than a quarter. Yeah, another 50 pages of material that I could have put in there, but there are already so many points we were making.
Yeah.
So I've been collecting this data for a long time because I've been adding strength to the variable resistance argument, and then of course you can't test one without the other. You can't have an exercise intervention look at the efficacy of it if your nutrition is poor.
Sure.
So I needed to find what the best nutrition was for building muscle and losing body fat, and it's crystal clear the answer to that question if you read the academic literature. But if you just read like the comments on social media, you will be lost. So
Well, I think that's a
uh,
good place to start because so the
that's
book,
why your podcast exists.
right, right.
I did
So
a little background, after my team connected with you, and yeah, you're trying to like pull the real or what is close to the real answers as possible, and also letting everybody know science is never set. There's always new research. Someday we might find out that if all we eat is broccoli, we're going to live, twice as long and be twice as strong and be super lean. And but I was just kidding. That's probably not
right,
going to
right.
happen.
So
But I mean, I just like if we there's always an open door, is what I'm saying for new findings.
sure. So for people who
Yeah.
don't know, the book weightlifting is a waste of time, right? Now, when you hear that, and obviously, so I've
Mhm.
been lifting since I was about 12. I'm 29 now. Yep.
I just
So
want to
there
hold it
you go.
up.
Perfect. So going on 16, 17 years now of lifting. Obviously, I hear that and I'm like, okay, is it? And this is kind of why I thought it'd be good to just kind of start rolling because I figured the best way to do this podcast would be without too many preconceived notions. Because I find that a lot of times somebody has maybe an image and maybe people disagree online and then they talk and a lot of times those disagreements settle, maybe there's a few points they disagree with but on the whole they do, and I find in talking with people most people tend to be very reasonable. So I said, to myself, I prepped for it, but I said let's just kind of have a conversation and see where it goes. So when you say, I'm going to assume here, when you say weightlifting is a waste of time, obviously you're not saying resistance training is a waste of time.
Not at
So,
all.
right. So I'm going to keep it as open mind as possible here because I know you feel like a lot of the fitness industry is misled. So let's just have a conversation and you can kind of tell me your perspective on, some of those big mistakes.
Sure. Misled implies that there's someone leading it.
I
There
would agree.
isn't. Yeah, there isn't. It's just like a cage full of screaming monkeys. That's all it is. Like I don't even really see much of an industry. I see a lot of failing businesses. a lot of confused people kind of drifting in and out of it. The majority of people in the fitness industry treat it like fast food work. Like
Okay.
they come in and they're a trainer while they're in college because they don't want to work at, McDonald's. It's a better job.
Right.
And then, they get their certification while they're working as trainers. I love that. That's the policy of a lot of big box gyms.
Yeah.
And, then they go on to something else. They get like, and I hear this from trainers all the time. At some point, I'm going to need to get an adult job. And I think, like, man, like, why don't we have? If I were emperor, and I probably should be, there would be something between like a trainer and like a physical therapist, where there'd be like a Paul Check trainer, like a lot, but you didn't have to go to another 4 years of school.
Right.
And like when somebody says cardio is the best thing for weight loss, it's like, all right, you can stop talking right now.
Yeah. So I think so far, definitely no disagreements there. I think it's very frustrating having, I have some academic background with it. I mean, I studied, the kinesiology and nutrition in college, but I don't put a lot of stock in that. Not that, I had a great professor who's one of the most published people out there in that field, Dr. Nicholas Radamus, but it's most of what I know.
Where did you go? Did
College
you go
of New Jersey.
Okay. Yeah. So I know Nick.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. One of my favorite references is Mukherjee Radamus about fixed bench press angles, where they really identify the impact ready range of motion.
Yeah.
And the massive outputs that human body is capable of just in that specific position. That was one of the catalysts of me creating my medical device to treat bone density.
Really?
Radamus Mukherjee, I think it was 1994.
Yeah, and I mean, if you've met him, he walks the walk. I mean, he's a beast. So he was great to learn from, but, typically, or not, there's a lot of people who kind of going with what you said about people not taking personal training seriously. A lot of times in colleges, it's kind of a stereotype that like who takes like the health sciences and the exercise sciences is kind of like the jock who doesn't care that much. And I think you have some like brilliant minds in the field, but a lot of times it's just almost like a throwaway. And I would say most of my knowledge has come from trying to read actual articles, studies, learn from people who I respect. And I would agree with you, most personal trainers, I think, are really misguided. Maybe they have a year under their belt. I mean, it's just a lot of nonsense out there. I think when we go on Instagram, and the standard, what you say, the fitness industry is a lot of nonsense. It's actually one of the frustrations of the podcast is, you try to have good educational content, and, like a natty or not video will get like 1 million views. And, it's a hard area it's hard to kind of like find a path in there, which is why I'm actually, it's not obviously like my full-time gig. So how did you actually like get into the field? I'm super familiar with your background beyond, writing the book.
So I don't come from the fitness industry. I still don't see myself as part of the fitness industry. I'm a medical device inventor. So like the OsteoStrong, if you've heard of OsteoStrong, the bone density treatment medical device, I invented that. And so and I partnered with Tony Robbins, and the CEO of the company is a guy named Kyle Zagrodzky. You should probably have him on your podcast. He can talk about developing like a franchise that's a completely different look at the human body and wellness, because that was all his. How to roll it out was all his ideas. But when rolling so I invented it, and I took it to a lot of different medical conferences, and as soon as I got some research done, it was amazing how this whole there's a big conspiracy in medicine to sort of squash good ideas for favor of just big pharma. I mean, that might be true somewhere, not in osteoporosis, The top experts in the world were like, this is great. Now, they did remind me, which is how I would start all my presentations, this is not for everyone. You have to be fully ambulatory and relatively healthy biomechanics to use that particular device. So it's a bone loading device. It strategically mimics impact, high impact forces, to put axial compression. So this is the axis of a bone running along the length of the bone, and then putting compression on the bone from end to end. So that's what the device does, and it has a robotic arm that helps get in exactly the right position every time for every user. And we have 140 locations in 8 different countries. And man, I got sidetracked. What question was I answering?
Well, first I'll just note that I like how you incorporated a solid triceps flex there as you were showing what the actual portion was.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, we were just, I think just talking about the issues with obviously a lot of this is going to be about issues in the fitness industry. I think, I'm sure a lot of people want me to ask you, so my understanding of it, this X3 system you have, is it's band tension, right? Now, I'm sure you would say it's very reductionist to just say it's simply band tension, but what are
That's like saying a wheel in a car are the same thing.
Yeah. So how would you explain it?
It's the world's most powerful variable resistance system. So the bands by themselves are worthless. Like if you have a band and it's a rehab level band, like 5 to 20 pounds, you can do rehab with it if you have a joint dysfunction, but that's not relevant to strength training. If you want to do strength training, you would need to go much higher. And what I demonstrate in my research when developing the medical device is that humans are 7 times stronger in the stronger range of motion, the impact ready range of motion, than they are in the weaker range of motion. And Nick Radamus's research backs that up. He's one of the references for that observation. The massive difference in like I'm just short of lockout, 120-degree angle of inclusion. If I'm just sort of protecting myself from impact or able to create force in that position, those are the most powerful positions. So I look at these impact-ready positions, and we have elderly deconditioned people putting 600 pounds through their lower extremities. Well, that's a lot, considering how conditioned they are. These are people who have never exercised, and yeah, like that's amazing. And of course, their bone is adapting very quickly. And so I thought, okay, this pretty much shows me something that no one's ever seen before, which is weightlifting is really not that great. Like, we're really getting the load right with weights in the range of motion where we damage joints the most and have the least amount of muscular engagement, which is at the bottom, like at the bottom of a bench press back here. So that's the only place we get the load right. And sometimes we overdo it and tear a pec or a tricep or something like that, or just chronically damage the joint and then end up with chronic joint pain. And I know so many guys who I lifted with in undergrad who can, barely raise their arm over their head now.
Yeah.
Right. So
I've definitely seen that basically when it comes to bone density, we're really looking at the load there. And for the most part, the higher loads, the better response we're getting. What would then be the argument against, let's say you're doing a bench press, either banded or reverse banded, you are then going to have more tension as it gets to the top and less at the bottom. And you can pretty much, depending on what level of bands, you could really make it a variable resistance doing that.
Yeah, that's how X3 works.
Right. So my question would be, compared to just using bands in a gym, for instance, or reverse bands.
Oh, yeah. The reason you can't just throw a band around your back, and like the band that I chest press with is 540 pounds at the top, 300 pounds in the middle, and 100 pounds at the bottom. If I tried to use that without the rest of the X3, I'd break both my wrists because the band will be outwardly turning my wrist. So I mean, like barbells are one of the smart things in the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm.
Barbells work great. We interface with barbells amazingly, especially with the internal rotation. So our wrist is always kept neutral. So I think that when you look at the entire setup, like we know we have massive variance in our output capacities. So why not massive variance in how we load the musculature? Because then we can fatigue the muscle to a much greater degree. And with that greater fatigue, we're going to get a greater growth stimulus, which 16 studies have confirmed.
But I guess my question is, if you are following that logic, why would that not apply? Like if you use a barbell bench press, I think as an example, and you use some really heavy elite FTS bands, so that at the bottom, let's say it is a 180-pound bench press, I mean, you can really load up a lot of bands so that it's an extreme amount of tension at the top.
Yeah.
So like I'm saying, do you think in that case it would be comparable stimulus and follow the principles you're talking about, or do you still see
completely?
Okay.
No, that would be, yeah, it would be a lot of bands you'd have to carry around. And also, like, there's this idea that weight, like somehow static weight provides some sort of magic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, we know what weights do, and then we see variable resistance outperforming weights in every test. And so it's like, well, you need both. Well, what part of these papers does it say both? Nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's variable resistance. End of the sentence. So I just took an approach where I'm going to create a higher level of variable resistance than most have ever seen, and then I'm going to test it. And it's worked out great. Like people have put on 20 pounds of muscle in 6 months. Now, I will also say, if you're a weightlifter and you want to be good at lifting weights, you have to lift weights.
Right.
It's
sure.
like a golf swing. Like you can't be a better golfer by just focusing on your bench press and not playing golf.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to perfectly transfer.
Right.
So what would you say? I'm going to ask a question that I think I know the answer to, but just because I think people listening will want to know. Somebody said, well, hey, we're trying to overload the strongest portion. Why not do heavy partials, for instance, and really load it up in that heaviest or that strongest portion?
You could get a myofibril effect by doing heavy partials, and that was what the Mukherjee Radamus study really did find. And I think that's part of Nick's training, where he does really heavy, strong range partials.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're missing out on a sarcoplasmic effect. You're missing out on hypoxia, and hypoxia, if done correctly, holding constant tension through a full range of motion, you can down-regulate myostatin. And so there's really three things going on in an X3 set, and you get one of those three with those strong range heavy partials. Mm-hmm. Still awesome. Still something that you could never get from a full range regular lift.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not against it. I mean, I guess my point. It's just not as powerful or as compact or presentable.
Yeah, I mean, when I've seen the studies on partial range of motion alone, not, with like a band or something, it seems like that is inferior for hypertrophy. My understanding is most weightlifting can inhibit myostatin. I mean, that's a significant driver of muscle growth, is that weightlifting in general inhibits myostatin. So I'm not sure, maybe you're saying that you're just more efficiently doing it with the
greatest reductions in myostatin have been from hypoxia. From constant tension. Bodybuilders have been doing this forever. It's not a new discovery. It's we have a better understanding now that there's so much literature on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one question I would think is right when you talk about the system, I think of a bench press, I think of a squat. I think a lot of these things where the end range of motion is the strongest, but how would that work then for, let's say, a row, where typically, it's pretty hard to get that last bit of range of motion?
Have you read the book yet?
So I just got the book recently, and let me see. Got it here.
I actually have an entire chapter about rows.
Okay.
And the different and how different they are. So I show the difference on page 70, the difference in the force curves and what to expect with a row versus just about anything else. And what you're referencing for the listener is the power position there's a strength curve to the bicep, there's a strength curve to the lat, and then there's some rear deltoid activation as well. And I couldn't really find a lot of force data on the rear deltoid because it's hard to really isolate it. And if you do, is that really how it's used in the body? Kind of like a quad extension. Quad extensions make your quads look great while you're doing them, but do they really do anything for your quads outside that? Consensus seems like no. But there's three things going on, but the output power position seems to be the middle. So what happens is we do two kinds of repetitions, and while we maintain constant tension with an X3 set. So we'll go full range of motion. So I'll do a row and I'll be pulling into my abdomen, let's say 15 times. That's the minimum amount of repetitions. But then normally, like with a chest press, I'll do my minimum amount, or let's say I'll do 20 with that chest press.
Yeah.
And then I'll end up getting another 4 or 5 partial repetitions to go to complete exhaustion, including the weaker range of motion. So the last repetition may only be 1 inch. Whereas with the row, you do your 15 repetitions, or let's say 20 or whatever, but then you might do 30 in that mid-range. So the mid-range is absolutely powerful. And when you watch somebody row, you'll notice that they start off fast with the momentum with their back, and they get another sort of burst of momentum in the middle, and then the end, they're almost kind of coasting because you're really inefficient at the end of that movement. So you see the same thing with X3. So we just do more diminishing range movements because that power position's in the middle.
Yeah, that rows and a couple other movements, but largely rows, I found that always to be a little annoying. You could say that with calves too, in terms of not the same issue in terms of the force curve, but in that, like, you can really load up calves a lot and do a partial range. And sometimes for me, it's like, I'll see guys doing crazy weights, and for me to get a full contraction, I mean, I have to use like pretty light weight a lot of time, but my calves almost don't feel fully worked if I'm trying to keep 100% the range of motion. And with the rows, I remember like when I was in high school, I posted up a video on like a forum trying to get like a form critique, and it was maybe like a set of 12 rows. And I remember people saying like, oh, well, you're not pushing hard enough. And I was trying to keep form perfect. So I'm doing like, I don't know, I mean, I was very skinny back then, so maybe like 115 pounds or something like that. But I was trying to keep this perfect range of motion. And because that end of the range of motion was so weak, I had to use such a light weight where it's like easy, 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 easy. Okay, this part is hard. And I could see that with what you're talking about, or even why some people do kind of cheat with rows, because it's a massive difference with how much you can use trying to keep it perfect form to the very end range of motion versus what you can get in that, middle 2/3 or so. Yeah. So for something like this, I mean, obviously, I think as you said, you obviously have your opinions of the fitness industry. I don't disagree. There are some minds in the industry who I respect quite a lot. Nick is one of them. I would say Dr. Eric Helms is a great, if you're talking about somebody who's leading the fitness or the evidence-based fitness industry, I'd say he's one of them. And he is pretty heavy on the research side. I think you have guys like Layne Norton who, for some people, he's a good middle ground between, entertainment and what a lot of people look for, and a science side of it. When you're trying to reach masses, I think entertainment, good or bad, I mean, it appeals to a lot of people.
It's unfortunate, but yes.
But yeah, it is true.
I think Layne's intention is to educate people, but he gets followed when he ridicules people.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because, like he beats up on Dave Asprey. Is Dave Asprey perfect? No, but he'll put out a book that makes like 30 different points. And he's not an expert on all 30 subjects. So does he make mistakes? I mean, yeah.
Right.
He does. And setting him on fire for it, is that justified? I don't know. I don't think so. But
yeah, I mean,
he's done a lot more good than he has bad.
Who's that, Layne or Dave?
Dave.
Yeah,
and Layne just treats Dave like an abused dog. Just beats him. It's just like, leave a man alone.
I think
someone else.
I think I don't do too many commentary videos on like other people, unless if there's like a particular thing that's I think very relevant, I will. But I think I've maybe done 3 videos out of the like 200 I've made. But yeah, a lot of times, I would call it infotainment. I think one of the reasons that the industry is not necessarily like a professional industry like you would maybe see in like medicine or something like that is because it is in a way like the gears that are turning, they're powered by views, right? And a lot of the time, and like the attention. And so I unfortunately don't know if that's something that'll change much. Somebody I do podcasts with quite a bit, Abel Sabai, we talk about this all the time. Our most viewed videos, they're not necessarily the ones that really get technical and into the science. I don't know if you had thoughts on that ever changing, but I'm not sure if it ever will because of the target audience.
Yeah. Fitness fans want. I think you're really gonna enjoy. This is an experience I had. You're gonna enjoy this. When I first developed X3, I wanted to license it to a company like I did with the OsteoStrong devices. So I developed this bone density medical device. I went to license it, and Tony Robbins, Kyle Zagrodzky, they licensed it, and I was just going to do the science. And if somebody wants me to talk to a group of physicians, I'll do that. So I do a lot of Skype calls for that kind of thing. Yeah. But I'm not the marketing. I'm not any other part of the business. I'm some woman lost her shoes at one of the franchises. I'm not who to call. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, like, can I just do like what I do? And like, let you guys like it. So it worked out great. And OsteoStrong is growing fast, and they're helping hundreds of thousands of people. It's awesome business. I want to do the same thing with X3. I want to find an already existing fitness company and license the intellectual property. I know it looks simple to all the haters. It's like, oh, it's just a stick in vans. Yeah, okay. No, it's not. And that's like saying an iPhone is a microchip and a piece of glass. It should only cost 50 cents. So okay, like I went and made my presentation, and I explained the scientific superiority to like every company that makes home fitness equipment. I should not name the names, but you guys know who they are. And I mean all of them. And they were like, oh, this product looks great, but you can't talk about science to the people who buy fitness stuff. And I'm like, well, why not? Like, is that a rule? And they're like, no. These people are the stupidest people in the world. Like, they are so moronic. You won't believe it. And I didn't believe it. And I was like, yeah, okay. So you guys tried to make a scientific argument, which was probably wrong. And somebody grilled you over it, and it didn't increase business. All right, I get it. Like, a lot of people trip over science as opposed to use it to teach. So I'm like, well, I'm different. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this product. So I launched it myself. And Dave Asprey even like advised me, like, don't go down the science path. I'm like, well, then what do I say? It's nice to use? No, it's superior. I can demonstrate that. So anybody who doesn't like it, they can go away. Go put your sideways hat on and go to the gym. Like, it's just like, I don't, it's like, I understand that there are people who are out there, and boy, was every company right. I was so blown away by the mindless screaming and kicking. Like, it was like I was talking to 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so here's what I did. This happened within like the first week of launching the product. I just pivoted, targeted busy executives, busy professionals. And our business has been skyrocketing growth ever since. We just don't focus on the fitness industry. Not at all.
So have you ever considered, because again, I mean, you're not going to get any arguments from me that a large portion of the fitness industry is very frustrating and pseudoscientific. I don't really pander to that audience. I mean, sometimes those people find my videos, but mine is definitely more, I try to stay scientific. Yeah. But I would say, I mean, from a professional side, like I said, you know Nick Radamus, but Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, Dr. Eric Helms had, I think those are very reputable individuals who are very scientific, and they clearly have a passion for determining what is the best method for growing muscle, strength, etc.
Sure.
Have you talked to I know you talked to Nick, but have you talked to Dr. Schoenfeld or Helms or anybody like that?
These guys are professors, and they got to be real careful as to what they say or what they endorse. And like, you find me on the internet, I'm very clearly selling a product.
Sure.
And I don't hide that. I don't say, I'm just going to educate you today. And then, by the way, here's my product I'm going to use as an example. Like the book, people say, this is just a commercial for X3. Well, the second word on the back of the book is X3. So am I hiding that? And by the way, this is a quote from the strength coach of the Miami Heat, and they even allowed me to use their brand. It's like teams, pro teams don't do that usually, but we make a big difference for their athletes. So, yeah, I mean, like, am I a sales guy? Yeah, sure. Like, do I want people to buy the product and succeed with it? We have a 1% return rate. Usually only the lightest band is unwrapped. So it means somebody wasn't strong enough to use even the lightest band. So, like, if it sucks, people buy it and it'll go away. So I don't know what everybody's so worried about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, like, you're, like I said, and this is why I said, we're obviously having a conversation here, even, I don't think this is a hidden thing either, right? Like you're on several podcasts. We hadn't talked previously, so part of it is now my viewers know about X3 too. Of course, I mean it's a good model. Like, I mean, that's kind of part of the point. And in return, I get to talk to somebody who has a lot of followers. And I mean, there's that inherent exchange, even if it's not always discussed. That's reality, right? And
that's reality, right?
And so I don't think there's an issue with that. I think people, I think they, even if they're maybe not always the most intelligent, they want to feel like they're doing things logically, right? People like to believe that they're logically. So I think a lot of times it's maybe who you're talking to and the message you're putting out. I think you certainly believe in your product. You said one thing where you said, saying that it's just a band and a stick is very simplistic. For somebody who, and obviously we talked about this a little bit, but for somebody who does see this, hey, like, could I just, like my question earlier, can we set up bands to a barbell? And I mean, and you even said, like, you could do that. What is it that's so different that's taken development to make this X3, in your opinion? Like, what exactly, if you could dumb it down for anybody, like, why is it different than a band and a stick?
That stick, it has internal rotation. It's actually solid instead of hollow, like an Olympic bar. And you could hook 1,000 pounds onto it, and it's not going to deform. It's made out of anodized aluminum, and it's got a solid steel core. When people say band and a stick, we have a lot of do-it-yourself kind of posts where somebody's like, "Look, I made an X3," and they made it out of steel. And of course, that pipe. Once they figure out how much weight they can actually put on the body, and start applying true X3 principles, whatever they built just crumbles and comes apart. And I haven't seen any injury videos yet, but I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of those, which that sucks. I don't want anyone to get hurt. But yeah, we built it for a reason. Actually, my first idea was just writing a book about band training and how you should like get a bar and get a thing that the bands move underneath and everything that was commercially available. And you've seen like home fitness products mostly are like made of plastic. They're made so they can ship really easily and inexpensively, very lightweight. So they might be good for somebody who wants to pretend they exercise. You know, like somebody who buys some bands with handles on them and, you know, it's just surgical tubing. It's like 5 pounds or whatever.
Right.
And then they're like, out at home. Yeah, no, you don't. You screw around with a surgical tube at home and you call that work. Yeah. I mean, like, let's just be real here. Like, is somebody really going to develop like a champion physique? Like right now I have over 40 professional athletes using X3 and allowing me to use their photographs with no compensation whatsoever. All I did was consulted with them. They get my advice for free in exchange for me using their pictures. What company has done that?
Right.
None ever. And it's because they believe in it. It's because they start using it and they're like, wow, this is totally different than weightlifting. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting faster. I'm engaging the body better. I have no joint pain whatsoever. And we got another truckload of these guys coming in that are going to be on the website soon. Some of them are doing ads for us and nobody's paid. So I mean, I got little things like that kind of coming in. And I also want to make sure that, like, I tell these guys, like, look, if you're on the verge of getting a contract with like another fitness company and they're going to pay you a lot of money, don't use X3 on camera because that'll screw your contract up.
Mm-hmm.
But keep in mind, there's only a couple fitness companies that make money. Most of them lose money and go out of business. You know, we got like Bowflex, we got Peloton. Well, actually, Peloton does lose money, but they started off with $600 million through an equity raise. So, hey, you know, it'd be a while before they burn that up.
It's funny you say that about the home bands. When I was like just getting started at this, like, you know, all I wanted was abs, super skinny kid, didn't know anything, and I would like watch infomercials.
We're like the same. That's exactly how I was.
Yeah. So
I was so little. Yeah.
I bought I don't even remember what it was called, but it was like an ab cruncher thing, and it had, you put like this band inside of it, and that was the tension, and there was like a yellow and an orange, whatever, and two different.
Did you hold it here, and then the other pads went like on your thighs, and you crushed it down?
Yes,
I had that.
Yeah. So it like immediately broke, and within like 2 weeks, yeah. And I called them. Kind of they gave me another one, but the second one broke, and I was just like, whatever. Like, but yeah, that is funny.
Yeah, it is, and that's also another thing where I think people jump to the conclusion just because it's like an at-home fitness product that it must be made out of cheap plastic or something. Because the first one I made was rubber coated for a more comfortable grip. Well, everybody thought it was plastic, and then they're like, "Why is it $500?" And then so the next one came out, and it's like anodized aluminum, and then those comments got cut in half. They're like, it's like serious.
Yeah.
Also, it actually did another thing. It kind of scared the kind of halfway in people, you know, like the fake fitness.
Right.
People, like, it's like, this is for serious people who are serious about strength and building muscle. If you're not serious about it, you know, go get a perfect push-up and just say you work out.
Yeah, I mean, I saw you were on Dr. Sean Baker's podcast, and you know, he was obviously a pretty top level athlete for a while there. I mean, still obviously in great shape, and I think he had been trying it maybe for a couple of weeks by the time you had talked. And you know, for somebody as strong as he is to have a hard time with it, I mean, I definitely, you know, not knowing a ton about it.
He struggles.
That's what he was saying.
Getting his deadlifts in. Now, he's also taller.
Yeah,
The taller you are, the more you stretch the band. Like the NBA guys, some of the top NBA guys use it, and people are like, well, why are they using the dark gray band instead of the black one or the orange one? It's like the guy's like 6'5". He's pulling, maybe 400 or 500 pounds right there.
Yeah.
Right. And that athlete would never be able to get that kind of stimulus because their number one priority once they get their contract is not getting injured.
Mm-hmm.
They don't lift heavy ever.
How do you deal with so I have two like black Elite FTS bands, and I pretty much only used one of them just for like different rehab purposes and everything. And over the years, I did notice that there was a difference in the amount of tension they provided, and even like at rest, there was a difference in the length. Have you come across that? I don't know how long the product's been out at this point, but have you come across people saying like, "Hey, I've noticed the tension is a little bit less."
Stretching out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That happens with petroleum-based bands. That does not happen with latex made from rubber trees. So ever. Now, what we'll have the band fail before that, but usually the bands, we're told that in a commercial environment, you should expect a band to fail within the 9-year mark. But that's a commercial environment. Well, it's latex is layered, so it's more like a rope. It frays and kind of comes apart, comes unraveled. It doesn't snap, which is another benefit of latex. Yeah.
So I assume eventually your goal is to get this into gyms and be able to sell it to maybe the commercial gyms.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't really know where that's going. I won't mention who this is, but a good friend of mine who was one of my first investors in my medical device, he's a founder of one of the largest gym chains in the country. And I was asking him questions about different. I own a nightclub with treadmills. We sell memberships to good-looking people. We don't want the fat ones. We send them away because if you're in the gym, fat people, nobody wants to be there. So and it's just, and all we do is sell memberships. We don't care if you come. In fact, we prefer you don't. And that's why the price of the membership has gone down because they know most people won't show up. So it's great. Like, what a business model.
Right. People if it's $10 a month, you don't cancel it.
Right. And that's the mentality of that industry. So I don't see any education going on there. There's an education that comes with X3. So right now we've been selling to busy professionals who really care about their fitness. The biohacking market has been great. Dave's market has been great. Ben Greenfield listeners have been phenomenal. They bought thousands of them. Like when I got a Greenfield podcast coming out in a couple of days, and I expect 3, 4, maybe 10,000 units to be sold that day. So I don't and my audience is actually much bigger than the gym audience. There's a lot more busy professionals that would just rather use something that's scientific and convenient and will give them as good or better results than they would get out of a gym than there are just gym people. So I think I'm just kind of like walking around the whole thing.
Yeah, I guess if you have your target audience, then you got what you got.
Here, you see that wine barrel right there?
Mm-hmm.
That's where my X3 is.
Okay. Convenient.
Yeah. Just keep it in the wine barrel, and I pull it out, and I do my workout, and I put it right back there.
All right, this is my version. Let's see. We got a bike. We got some bands. We got some weights in the back. It's I don't know what I have, 300 pounds here. Obviously, this was really helpful for COVID, when that happened. So it saved me. It's not, what I typically do, but let me see if I can get this. So it sounds like this is not enough, you're telling me? This isn't going to get me there.
No.
That's my rehab band. That's about all I use that for.
Right. Bands are great for rehab.
Yeah. So I mean, I probably don't have too much more time, but do you want to, you said you included nutrition in the book. I didn't hear you talk too much about nutrition elsewhere. Not that you don't talk about it, just I hadn't heard much about it. What I had heard was that you follow either a keto or even a carnivore approach. Is that accurate?
More like carnivore.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of meat.
A lot of meat. Is that something that you had done for a long time, or you had kind of gravitated towards later?
I've been ketogenic for 13 years. Coincidentally, I haven't been sick in 13 years. My hemoglobin A1C score is 4.
Nice.
Yeah. And I'd always liked keto, but I actually don't like calling diets ketogenic because your body is ketogenic.
Right.
A nutrition program is not ketogenic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, also, the way to get in a ketogenic state is not eating carbohydrates. It actually, and I think this has been so heavily molested by the people who sell products that have a lot of fats in them. So it's like, oh, you need to eat fat so that you burn more fat. No, that's not correct. It's your body can metabolize its own body fat or body fat you're putting in your mouth instead of metabolizing your own body fat in the state of ketogenesis. So it's I try and tell people the difference very, very frequently. Like, just in the absence of carbohydrates and really all other calories or surplus calories, you're going to be metabolizing your body fat, but you don't want carbohydrates in the system. Now, I also do believe carbohydrates have their place, be it a very limited place. I think we can get better cellular. I don't think. I mean, it's shown. There's research I reference in the book that talks about cellular hydration, and if you time carbohydrates correctly right after a workout, and you use it to replenish glycogen, then especially in combination with a vasodilation strategy and stretching, you can trigger hyperplasia. And Professor, help me out, Antonio, University of Florida.
Oh, shoot.
Protein research. He's like an icon. Like,
I know. Why is that
blanking?
Oh, wait, Jose Antonio?
Jose Antonio. Professor Jose Antonio, thank you. Yeah. He's awesome. And so he did all this hyperplasia research by looking at stretching the muscle fascia and getting some growth out of that. And then, he's looking at animal models, and the shit they did to animals to get them to grow muscle was like
torturous.
You and I would not do it.
Yeah.
I think I'm a little crazier than you. I might, but no sane person would do it.
Have you done much with like extreme stretches?
That's what I'm talking about. Extreme stretches, and you're in the stretch position for like an hour.
Yeah, I mean, because like Dante Trudell, DC training.
I can't even believe that you just said that name, but yeah, of course.
Yeah, so why can't you believe it?
Forever ago, like, weren't you like 5 when that guy was around?
Oh no, I talked to Dante
quite
a bit. Yeah, Dante, Scott Stevenson.
Oh, he's awesome. Yeah.
Dante refuses to do a podcast, but Scott's been on here probably. He doesn't do any podcasts. Like, he won't even do a podcast with Dustin Hanshaw or any of those guys. He's just because he's so burnt out from talking about the same stuff all the time. But he's big on the extreme stretches, and it's like you'll think, oh, like I would do that if it would be a lot of growth, and then you get like a few minutes into like a heavy, like a pull-up stretch or something, and you're just like rethinking your life, and they can be intense.
Yeah, so I've tried all kinds of stretching protocols, and that guy was very inspirational. And it's a shame he never went in the direction of research, because if he had documented some of that stuff in a clinical manner, especially being a guy who could talk people into volunteering to do it. Mm-hmm. so it could get past the human ethics board, because you can't just take a randomized group of people and put them through that.
Right. Sure.
Like an ethics board. For those who don't know, like a lot of universities, they have what's called an ethics board. Basically, like, are you going to grab a bunch of people for study and then hurt them, or torture them, or give them psychological damage? And it's a really good thing we have those, because like terrible shit could happen to people. Right. So and if he had done that and actually got bodybuilders to volunteer for it, it wouldn't be randomized, but the findings would have been incredible. He could have replicated some of those bird models where in 2 days they had 130% growth in their pectoral muscles.
I always wondered if that would apply. Like, obviously, you're not going to have a human just hanging for hours and whatnot. But I always wondered, like, yes, we saw that extreme growth. But if you had a bodybuilder who, we don't need to get into a debate on like natural potential, but like I think we would agree that there's a point where you stop growing, right? So whatever that point is, let's say you have a point that you stop growing from traditional weight training after 10 years. Would those people still get a massive response from that extreme stretch? Or was it just because obviously these birds aren't, lifting weights or anything? You know what I mean? Like, was it just that it got up there faster, or would it?
That's what I would want to know.
Yeah.
That's why I wish that research had been done. And I think one of Dante's like big points was like he really recommended protein overfeeding, and that kind of was disproven.
Yeah.
And and so I mean I think he's tired of being like having that be the conversation. It's like, so your big thing you were wrong about. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, like I'm out of here.
Well, he's still a pretty big proponent of very high protein. I've talked to him about it because I said, when I dropped down my protein, I didn't notice a difference. I mean, I don't go low protein. I mean, I still at like 1.25 grams per pound or so. But I did the 2 grams per pound for years. I mean, I was 160 pounds eating 350 grams of protein. And when I dropped that down to, it was a lot. When I dropped that down to like, 240, it just, my diet was better and like more enjoyable. And I didn't notice any decrement in performance or anything like that. So I think.
Did you have a girlfriend at that time?
Not at the time.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing.
Yeah, right.
Just watching you eat all the time and.
Well, luckily I had to hook up with the people in the dining hall, so they would just give me extra chicken breasts and all that. But yeah. Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, I will have links to the book and everything in the podcast show notes. So where can people find out more about you, the book, and all of that?
I created a landing page. Also, my last name is difficult for most people, so it's just drj.com.
Okay.
DOCTOR, the letter J.com.
Awesome, man. And again, I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, fantastic.